And we are coming to the guest studio. My guest today is Jaap Arriens, a Dutch visual journalist based in Warsaw who contributes to AFP, CNN, and many other major outlets. He's been covering politics and sport news and other news in the Central Eastern European region for the last 10 years, and he's been living in Poland for the last 10 years. Welcome, Jaap.
Thank you for having me.
Very first question is very direct. Why Dutch flag is a French flag, but just turned?
Well, that's a good question because, you know, the French and the Dutch have almost nothing in common at face value. So I don't see it, you know, I can't, you know, really clarify that. The only thing I could say is just don't talk about this to the Dutch people. The Dutch are very, very proud, you know, in the sense, not in the same sense as Poland. When you come to Poland, you can feel people, for them being proud is a very important thing.
Yeah.
And the Dutch like to think of themselves as, you know, very sober. We're not proud, which is also a French thing, right? Being proud. And so the Dutch, basically, for them, everything south of Holland, people are not as intelligent as the Dutch.
All right, so French are less intelligent
so
than the
probably
Dutch.
the French have a flag and they thought, you know what, probably the Dutch think that they admire, the Dutch are admired and that the Dutch flag is the original one and putting it vertically is not here.
Politics. Are you definitely going to help some outlets covering the upcoming Polish elections? Yep. What are you thinking? Where is Poland going with the elections when the PiS might lose the majority and everything? So are we going to expect some kind of turmoil or else?
This is probably going to be Europe's most exciting set of elections for a long time to come. A lot of people are very anxious to see the results.
Yeah.
Even I think the ruling party is very anxious to see what the result will be. So I don't expect a lot of turmoil. You know, the previous elections, even though the current party is doing everything they can to help that last, you know, squeeze every little bit of juice out of these elections.
Who would you vote for? Can you vote, actually?
I can't vote for.
Well, who would you vote?
But if I would vote, you know, that's a good question because I don't feel that I identify with the current political party and their policies.
Are you with the Confederation, which is the right one?
But on the other hand, I think the opposition seems toothless.
You've spent the last 18 months helping the media outlets covering the war. You've been to Ukraine, you've been helping the outlets to receive the footage, and you felt the war. And I'm just curious, from what you see, how the tonality has changed, if it did actually, of the media outlets on the narratives about the war?
It is obvious for anyone who comes there, I think, that there is only one way to cover this conflict, because there's not only an emergency going on in Ukraine, there's an emergency going on in liberal democracy. So for news outlets, it's important, not even just for now, but for posterity, for the future, to reflect the gravity of the situation that is ongoing and you know, probably will be going on for quite a while.
You're helping the viewers of these media outlets like CNN, AFP, and many others, which is millions, to actually see through their eyes the drastic changes of the world through the war lens, let's say. But my question is, do you think you have less work and less money because of TikTokers, bloggers, and all these Instagrammers who would film it right away from the spot, and they're not a journalist or neither a blogger?
You know, it's possible that there is less work in the way we are used to, but on the other hand, the pool also has become much larger. So if you want to, I think you could even do better, even as a traditional videographer, cinematographer, because the market is just, and the opportunities have grown so much. So it's difficult because you have to find a way to pivot and maybe be more creative if you're not really in a niche. But for sure, I think it's a positive development.
Has your rate increased through the war?
It depends on the outlets. So
who pays the most? Is it Americans or French?
I can tell you that the ones who pay the most are the biggest ones.
Okay.
And but they only pay the most if you know how to get paid the most.
Listen, Russia today is the biggest, or one of the biggest. They probably pay the most. Would you work for them?
I would not, no. You know, before the start of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, I had a very comfortable living working for a Chinese state media outlet. And the day the war started, even though this took a huge chunk out of my income, I emailed my editor and I said, I'm very sorry. I've had a great time working for you guys, and it's nothing personal, but I cannot continue cooperating.
Thank you for that.
That's my point of view. I don't feel that would be the right thing to do. And since then, I've definitely had to, you know, find ways to compensate for this income, but I could not do this personally, no.
And if we would do the rating of the media outlets that you would or would not work for, so RT, no. What about Fox News?
You know, I think that's debatable. You know, there's a lot of good journalists also working for Fox News.
If Tucker Carlson, and when he was working there, would invite you to do that for his show, for his program.
It's funny that you mentioned the name because I can't stand the sight of Tucker
Yeah, me neither.
So then definitely no, I would not work for a show, but I think Fox News cannot be directly discredited as a bad news outlet. It depends. You know, if, let's say, Trump would win the election and Fox News would go right back to where they were, which means, you know, then I would not do it because they are so flip-floppy when it comes to Russia that, you know, I don't think any journalist worth their salt should then consider working for an outlet like Fox.
What about Pravda.ru?
I guess you're referring to a Russian outlet, which I'm not...
That's more of a jokey thing. Pravda is from Soviet times, like the only, the first one, the only, which gets all the propaganda information in it. But of course, you would not work for them.
I don't think I would work for any outlet of which the money ends up in Russian hands, or that does not have abide by journalistic ethics as you know, as they should be. So you know, if that means they cross any of those lines, I don't think any journalist worth their salt should even consider working for an outlet.
To your triple identity thing in the end. So what is the thing that you want our audience to know about this region, which is Central Eastern Europe, and this experience is coming out of your 10 years life in here? What is that you want to know, want us to know?
I think the best way to explain it is through the eyes of a colleague of mine. She she studied in Ukraine for a while, and she's been a correspondent in Warsaw for a year. She just recently wrote a book about her Russian teacher or teacher Russian language who lives in Kiev, and her experience about the war. She published a book about this in the Netherlands. And you know, she comes to Warsaw often, and I say, you know, what do you think about this country and this area of the world that you learn to love and have a fascination for? Don't you see what's happening to personal rights of certain individuals? And she said, yeah, but every time I come here, I'm still surprised, because you can find one end of the spectrum, but on the same day, the complete opposite of that spectrum. You can find all of humanity here, the worst, but also the best. And I think that's one way to describe it. If you would come here, you would never been here before, you would be surprised.
Do you think Ukrainian grain will be transited fine through Poland? Basically, this is part of a bigger question on the tensions, which are ongoing tensions. Are those tensions fueled because the elections are here in Poland, or those are national interest defense by Polish government?
You know, this is an interesting question, because for the Polish government, this is one of many very contentious issues where they're torn between two sides. Yeah. They are dependent on the farmers as their electorate on the one hand. On the other hand, you know, there's also for them money to be made to transition Ukrainian grain. There's interest for the rest of the world for Ukrainian grain to go through Poland. But I think until the elections, we will not see a decision on this. They're going to postpone this. And until then, it's going to remain a mystery, I think.
And with this mystery, we're going to end. Thank you so much, Jaap, for
Thank you.
being with us. And I'm going to see you in a moment.